What's good, fam? It's been a hot minute since I dropped the video. I think the last time I dropped the video was probably almost a month ago. And so I just wanted to drop a quick memo, so to speak, to let y'all know this is something I do intend to fully continue on with. I have a lot of ideas for the Fictional Basketball League as well as this channel because, like I say at the end of every video, I actually enjoy playing these games. It makes me happy, and so I'm going to continue on with this, even though I may not be able to post as frequently as I like because I work a 9 to 7, and on top of that, I'm studying at night and taking evening classes at night. So I don't have the schedule that I used to have prior to when I started this channel. But nonetheless, if you're rocking with me, I appreciate you. This will continue on. As I mentioned before, I do have a lot of plans for the FBL specifically, as well as ideas for this channel. So with that being said, this episode was recorded back towards the middle of April, around the April 10th to April 19th time frame, but I finally got to editing it. So a lot of the references may be outdated, but nonetheless, I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think. Leave a like, leave a comment. I love to hear back from you all, get to know y'all. Let's get into it. What's good? What's good? What's good, fam? This is episode 20 in season 1 of the Fictional Basketball League, or FBL for short. And so if you're new to the spot, welcome to the zone. And if you're a returning visitor, welcome back, fam. So last week, we walked through the first of the final 2 weeks of the regular season, and the Lakers were fighting to clinch the first seed. The Mavericks were trying to make sure they didn't lose their position in the standings, and the Pelicans were fighting to stay alive and get into the playoffs. So today's video will be a continuation as we focus on the drama that unfolded during the final week of the regular season, with the first game going to the Mavs, who will face off with the Pistons, and then they'll also be going up against the Nuggets and Thunder this week. The Pelicans will face the 76ers, Wizards, and Spurs, and finally, the Lakers will face the Timberwolves, Kings, and Suns. Now, considering we're going to go through each game for each of my teams, I'm going to follow the same format of the last video, whereby I start each game with the simulation and hop in if the team is down bad to 1, save time since I played 12-minute quarters, and 2, challenge myself to get better at the game. So with that being said, let's dive into week 26. And first up, we have the 12th seeded Pistons versus my Mavs. And I'll admit, I wasn't really worried about the Pistons because they've had a rough, and I mean rough season, but you never know with the Sims because the Mavs secondary isn't the greatest at scoring nor defending now that I moved Steve Levins into the starting lineup. But towards the end of the first quarter, the Mavs were able to gain a 14-point lead over the Pistons, but by the end of the half, the Pistons outscored the Mavs, but they were still down by 12. However, in the third, the Mavs pretty much dominated the Pistons, ultimately ending with the Mavs beating the Pistons 118-93. Chase had a wild stat line with a career high 42 points, 9 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block, all while shooting 16 for 23 and 3 for 6 from beyond the arc. He pretty much carried the team, with the second highest scorer being the now injured Duncan Webb, who had 14 points, 7 boards, 4 assists, and 3 steals while shooting 6 for 11. And speaking of injury, I was nervous that Duncan's injury could get aggravated, which would be terrible considering how tight the seating is out in the West, but fortunately, the injury was playable. Other notable items is Leo Marai. He had one of the best games he's ever had on the team. Eddie Yao left much to be desired, and Steve Levins, he did his thing, getting a 12-point double-double with 10 boards, 6 assists from the big man, which is unheard of, and 3 blocks. But looking at the Pistons box score, Quinn Forbes continued to be a dog. It's a shame that he doesn't get much support from his team, mainly because he had 25 points, 4 boards, 6 assists, and shot a little under 500. Deion Bridges had a typical game, whereas Darryl Landry surprisingly matched Deion from a scoring perspective, but outside of that, he did nothing else. Manuel Figueroa, he didn't show up, which I'm happy about because he can be very dangerous when he does in fact show up, but all in all, a win is a win. Now next up, we had the 76ers coming to NOLA to face the Pelicans, and I can't hold you, I was a bit nervous about the 76ers because despite the games we've watched recently, the 76ers are actually dogs. Now the Pelicans defense has been sus all season. But with that being said, the first quarter was neck and neck until about the 6-minute mark, after which the Pelicans started to gain some momentum. By the end of the second, the Pelicans almost had a 20-point lead. Now, going into the third, the Pelicans were rolling enough to make me think like, yo, we kind of got this game on lock as long as the third string didn't fumble the bag. But our hard work paid off, and surely enough, we didn't end up with the 40-point lead that we started with at the fourth. Well, at the very least, the third string got some PT so they could develop a little bit, and in the end, we ended up beating the 76ers by 31 points. And I can't lie, this one was a great win for us, now 6 in a row. And the team really came together for this game, man, with Miles and X doing exactly what I expect them to do. Miles almost had a double-double with 29 points, 4 boards, and 8 assists. And X, on the other hand, had a great stat line for his standards specifically as well, because he had 27 points, 6 boards, 3 steals, and shot 11 out of 16 from the field. So compared to how Axe started off the season, to see his progression, his efficiency, and overall contribution to the team has definitely pleased me. This is how he was playing in the previous version of my league that I was playing prior to starting this league. But I also want to talk about Henry Fisher, because he really surprised me with his almost 20 points, which is unheard of. He normally is in the single digits from a scoring perspective, but in today's game, he had 17 points and shot 70% from the field and 60% from beyond the arc, which is wild. I've never seen Henry put up a 3-ball in a game, so this was crazy to me. I only wish I could get more production out of Zach. Don't get me wrong, 10 points on 50% shooting isn't bad, and he's able to get some boards, assists, and steals, but given his stature, I'd like to see more out of Zach. And the final disappointment, and probably the biggest disappointment for me, is Dario Floyd, because I traded Lester Fuller thinking Dario would be a two-way player for us, but it just hasn't panned out the way that I hoped. And so, unfortunately, as long as he's able to contribute something off the bench, it'll be great. But right now, it's kind of weak. But on to the 76ers, and I will say that Wesley Law had a solid game with 21 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, and he shot 7 for 16. Shannon Tarsuski, he almost had a double-double himself with 14 points, 9 boards, shooting 6 for 13, but both he and Wesley were terrible from beyond the arc, and on top of that, the two of them both got into foul trouble. Now, I didn't know that Randall Cameron was actually back in the game, but for somebody that's still fairly injured, he outperformed many of his teammates with 14 points, 9 boards, just like Shannon, but he had 6 assists on top of that. Now, his shooting splits weren't the greatest, shooting 4 for 11, but beyond the arc, he was pretty solid. Ralph Holloway, he had 13 points, shooting 6 for 11, and Angel Reed had 12 points, 4 assists, 2 steals, and shot 5 for 9. Like I said in the 76ers spotlight, I had high expectations for Angel. I don't know if it's the system or if it's the playbook that the coach isn't running any plays for him, but I expect the Angel to pretty much dominate this entire season on this doggish kind of team. But him only scoring 12 points, considering who he's modeled after, is pretty alarming to me. But maybe in season 2 we'll see something different from Angel. But that being said, considering how stacked the 76ers are in general, there isn't a clear leader, if that makes sense. Like, every game has a different lead given the situation, but sometimes they struggle to kick it up a notch. Ralph Holloway, for example, he probably had the best efficiency out of the entire team, but only had 13 points. It sucks for them in this instance, but it's great for us because we got the much needed win. Now, next up, we have the Utah Jazz versus the Phoenix Suns, and I'll admit, the Jazz has had a pretty bad season, but they've been able to show out against some of the better teams out in both conferences. Now, if you didn't know, the Suns came into this week as the 7th seed, so naturally, one would think this game would be a wash. But considering what we saw last week when the Suns went up against the Pelicans, I thought this might be a good game to watch so we could see if 1, Jimmy Taylor, and 2, Kim Shafino are really like that. Now, although the Jazz were the 10th seed coming into this week, the Jazz were leading the regular season up against the Suns 2-1. So I was expecting a solid game, especially when you look at the matchups. And so for those of you that are new to the channel, new to the series, I try to highlight games across the FBL, not just my 3 teams. So let's get into it. Early in the first, Dave Smith and Kim Shafino were going at it, getting buckets and getting defensive stops. Dave started off the contest with a big three-point shot after losing Guy Costa, who had no business guarding him, but Dave was able to capitalize on the mismatch. But not too soon after, Kim Shafino lost Dave Smith around the pick and hit a nice mid-range shot. I will say that the Jazz seemed to have better chemistry on the court compared to the Suns in the first minutes of the game. As you saw, Dave Smith could have easily attempted a layup, but he found Julian Gamble open in the corner, who buried the three to take the lead. Now, Julian is another person who was going off early in the game, and as you can see here, we have Kim Shafino guarding Julian, who hit Kim with a nice spin move, and gets a nice layup in the paint, bringing the Jazz lead up to 5 points. That man Julian hit Kim with the mean, and I mean mean spin move, and I can't front, I got mad hype when I saw this live. But fast forward a bit to when Jimmy got subbed in for Kim Shafino, and Jimmy Taylor definitely caught my attention because he brought a different type of energy for the Suns, blowing past Vin Hardy to finish at the rim. And with under 5 minutes left in the second quarter, the Suns were down by 16 with the second string fighting to get back in the game. At this point, the Suns were shooting 26% from the field and yet only down by 16 points, thanks in part to the Jazz shooting poorly. But that wasn't going to stop Dave Smith, who had his foot on the Suns' neck, getting to the rim and drawing contact, and won. Now, the Jazz did make some suspect plays, which created some openings for the Suns. Julian in this situation got caught sleeping, and Jace Van Rossum took full advantage of the situation to get a quick two in the paint. Now, Kim Shafino at this point had a cold streak, but definitely made some shots when they were needed. But if Julian Gamble had to say, he wasn't about to let the Jazz come back. Jace Van Rossum adjusted quickly after the pick, but Julian is just nice with it, hitting the spin fadeaway jumper in Jace's face, whole lot. A few moments later on the fast break, Julian comes back again with another jumper from the free throw line. Kim Shafino came right back with a three-point shot, and I just wish he was more efficient with the shooting because, as you can see, he can hit the deep shots, as can Chris Cross, shooting over Wyatt Page for back-to-back three-point shots. And by the end of this half, the Suns were still down by 9 points, but both teams were shooting pretty horribly. And so as you can see here, the halftime stats show that the Suns were down by 9 points, with the Jazz a little more efficient shooting wise, but the stats were fairly in line between the two teams, with Julian Gamble having 15 points, 3 boards, 1 assist, and Harvey Outlaw being the shiner on the Suns with 6 points and 10 boards. Now, diving into the third, Chris Cross showed us again that he could pull it from beyond the arc, hitting a three-pointer off the screen to bring the score to within 8 points. And now, although he can hit them, that doesn't always mean that he will. And yet again, we have Dave Smith being aggressive, blowing by both Guy Costa and Harvey Outlaw for an easy layup. And in this quarter, I would say there was a lot of heat coming from the Suns starting five as well as the bench. And look at Jace Van Rossum, able to draw contact and won. But as I was saying, both teams, although they brought heat, they both got into a lot of foul trouble early in the quarter, and in this moment we have Donald McCarthy being guarded by Jace Van Rossum. And I don't know what it is, man, but the Suns kept getting lost on these spin moves, another easy 2 points in the paint. Now fast forward to when the Suns started their run, and in this moment Horace Dandridge got an easy dunk in the paint after the dish from Jerome Parma. Nothing too crazy, but Jimmy was still on one, leaking out after a good contest by Harvey Outlaw to take a tough shot in the paint over Vin Hardy for 2 points, and sheesh, Vin was out here struggling on defense, man. But fast forward at the 4-minute mark, Harvey Outlaw got another key stop and Jimmy was leaking out again. This time Omari Fofana dishes the rock to Jimmy out in the corner, who hit a mean green from 3. The score is now 66-62. But Jimmy still wasn't done, man. Off the pick from Omari, Jimmy hit a tough layup over Vin Hardy again, bringing the Jazz lead down to 3 points. And Wyatt Page, man, he kept giving Chris Cross space and ended up with another J in the face. And you got to respect that man's range. I'm telling you, you can't assume Chris is going to brick it. But fast forward to the top of the fourth, Julian Gamble was still in attack mode. First, he hit a mid-range to bring the game to 78-73. Next, he hit a layup over Jace Van Rossum. Third, Julian hit a 3-point shot off of the fast break. And fourth, Julian hit another 3-point shot off the fast break. I will tell you, man, Julian was on one. He by himself went on a 10-0 run against the Suns. And the Suns, man, the Suns starting lineup wasn't looking good at all. Harvey Outlaw was the only one able to stop Julian, but not right there, as Julian hit a deep mid-range shot. But the battle between Dave Smith and Kim Shafino continued on, with Kim scoring a jumper right in Dave's face. However, at the 7-minute mark, Kim was swapped out again for Jimmy Taylor, who took control of the offense. I can't hold you. The battle was now between Jimmy Taylor and Dave Smith, and Dave, I must say, was out here showing out, losing 2 defenders and finishing with a nice dunk in the paint. Jimmy, fast forward, came back and returned the favor by hitting a 3-point shot after losing Donnell McCarthy around the screen. Jimmy wanted all of that smoke, and mind you, he's coming off the bench, fam. A few moments later, you can see what I was saying about Harvey, who was able to slow down Julian and get a much-needed stop, ripping the rock from Julian's hands. With some good ball movement, Jimmy was able to finish at the rim for another 2 points. And I personally think that Monty Williams should have kept the bench in, because once they were out, the Suns' game plan collapsed in the Jazz, and I mean specifically Dave Smith. He had his way with the Suns, had that boy Kim cold again. But in the end, the 10-seeded Jazz ended up beating the 7-seeded Suns 114-95. Julian Gamble, hands down, was the player of the game with 29 points, 7 boards, 3 assists, a steal, and a block, shooting 10 for 18 from the field, 3 for 5 from beyond the arc, and 6 for 6 from the free throw line. So with that being said, let's look at the box score so we can wrap up this game and move to the next game that we actually have in this video. Man, when I say the Suns simply couldn't buy a bucket, they couldn't buy a bucket. They were led by Jimmy Taylor, who scored 21 points and shot a little under 50% from the field and 60% from beyond the arc, coming off the bench. I cannot stress that enough, man. He was followed by Kim Shafino, who had an abysmal outing, shooting 7 for 36 from the field and 2 for 10 from beyond the arc, which is a huge departure from the stats we saw previously last week. Or was it earlier in this game? I don't know. But in any event, I personally think that Jimmy should be starting over Kim, but that's just based on the stat lines, right? If Jimmy had been playing as long as Kim has, his stats might be even better than what they are now. The points per game, Jimmy is almost in line with Kim, and mind you, Jimmy spent a good portion of the season either on the DMP list or limited to 10 minutes per game. Compared to Kim, who almost gets 30 minutes each game and started every game this season, Jimmy right now is averaging roughly 11 minutes per game for the season, having only played 61 games. So Kim does in fact get more assists, blocks, and steals, but his shooting splits are lower than Jimmy's, and don't get me wrong, I enjoy watching Kim get busy on the court, but these subtle differences may hurt the Suns in the playoffs, in my opinion. Now, the biggest disappointment for me was Chris Cross's poor performance, man. As the team star, Chris only had 14 points and shot 6 for 17. Now, I know he had a few clips where he was pulling it, but as you can see here, that man only shot, 2 out of 8 3-point shots? So shooting 25% from beyond the arc? That's not substantial, man. The 76 overall Jimmy Taylor, who started the season out as a 72, and he was on the bench, not playing any games, outperformed the 88 overall Chris Cross, which is wild to me. Now, I'm not going to hold you. Harvey Outlaw and Jace Van Rossum, they both tried their best they could by scoring double-digit points, with Harvey being the only person on the team with the double-double. And this is Harvey Outlaw, who's a 68 overall, mind you. The bench tried their best to keep the game close, but it wasn't enough without the help of the starting 5. That's it. The Suns bench had 37 points compared to the Jazz's 19 points, all led by Jimmy Taylor. So this is why I wanted to see Jimmy play and see what he could do. Now imagine if Chris and Kim played better, the outcome of this game might have been different. But in any event, the Jazz, on the other hand, were led by Julian Gamble, Dave Smith, and Justice Blue, who combined had a total of 79 of the Jazz's 114 points. Now, I already mentioned Julian's stat line, but look at Dave Smith's stat line. He had 28 points, 6 boards as the one guard, 6 assists, 4 steals, and a block. We ain't gonna talk about the turnovers, but it shows you that both Kim and Jimmy didn't have an answer for Dave. Now, next up, we have Justice Blue, who had a 22-point double-double with 22 boards, 1 assist, 1 steal, and 1 block, shooting 10 for 23 from the field. It goes to show that the Jazz won because they took advantage of all the Suns' misses. Looking at Darryl Fletcher, he had a decent outing, all things considered, with 11 points and shooting 4 for 7 while getting 5 boards. And Robin Campbell, who was quiet in the game, only scoring 9 points out of 36 minutes, but he had 7 boards, 2 assists, all while shooting 4 for 10. So overall, the Jazz capitalized on their defensive stops with 31 fast break points compared to the Suns' 11, and needless to say, this game did not turn out the way I expected, but the Jazz win the regular season series 3-1. Now next up, we had the 6th-seeded Timberwolves going up against Raphael and the 2nd-seeded Lakers. And in the first quarter, I'll admit the scoring was pretty low, with the Lakers holding a 6-point lead over the Wolves, but by the end of the second quarter, the Lakers held their lead by 5 points, even though the Wolves ultimately won the quarter by 1 point. In the third, the Wolves kicked things into second gear, not only leading in scoring, but causing several lead changes. The Lakers took a small lead towards the middle of the quarter, but towards the end of the third, the Wolves came close to taking the lead. And then starting in the fourth, the Wolves' run continued to where they took an 11-point lead, scoring 22 points to our 8. And I can't lie, I ain't like it at all, so I had to dive in to see if I could save this game. We had a big deficit to deal with, only 6 minutes and 54 seconds to do it, which meant from this point forward, the team needed to make every bucket count and stop fumbling on defense. Now, the first play resulted in Raphael selling and Ricky Boss hitting a mid-range jump shot off of a pick to increase the Wolves' lead. Soon after, we got caught lacking again, and Wayne Forbes took full advantage to hit a 3 off of a fast break to bring the score to 107-93. Our transition defense was definitely an issue, but we started to slowly get our act together, with Raphael learning from his previous mistake and causing Ricky to take a poor shot. But then, Raphael found the open man in Pablo Knox and drove aggressively to finish at the rim for 2 points in the paint. Now, the Lakers finally started to get some life in their game, and Leo Yamasaki here saw Raphael leaking towards the corner and threw a nice dot, ending with Raphael hitting the shot from beyond the arc. And you know what? I just realized the Lakers were at home getting washed like this. It's a shame. But now, with under 4 minutes left in the quarter, Leo threw a risky pass to Raphael in the post. Raphael posts up Ricky Boss, drop step, layup, easy 2 points. The Lakers were down by 3. Now the Lakers finally started on a run with multiple possessions ending with 2 points in the paint. First with Pablo Knox, followed by Deion King, who hit Gilbert Hajiwara with a dot in the paint, bringing the score to 107-108. Now don't get it confused, the Wolves weren't going to take this L lying down. Every point the Lakers scored, they came right back, and to keep it a buck, it felt as if the Timberwolves were spamming the pick and roll, with Ricky finishing at the rim as we just saw there. But fast forward to the under 2 minutes, look at this dot from Raphael to Gilbert Hajiwara for the Lakers to take the lead again. And I can't even tell you how many lead changes there were within the last 5 minutes of the game, but this was a crucial moment. And as I said before, we didn't have an answer for the pick and roll. Wayne Forbes sets up the play. Raphael tried to switch thinking Leo would do the same, but nope. Easy 2 points in the paint for Freddie, and now the Wolves are back up by 1 point. Now here's where things get goofy. Peep game. Raphael had an open lane to the rim, right? Rather than take a layup, he ended up taking a bogus shot, and on the other end, Raphael tries to deflect the pass, but Freddie capitalized on Mel Reynolds' position to throw a dot for 2 points and 1. Now the Wolves were up by 4 points, and for this play, Raphael decided to slow things down and let the play develop after leaving his position. Deion King missed the opportunity to dot Raphael in the paint, so Raphael let the team reset. Now, Gilbert Hajiwara was running around a few screens, but Raphael saw an opening and drove to the paint for 2 points. And with under a minute left and a 2-point deficit, the Wolves again hit the Lakers with the pick and roll, but this time, Raphael noticed Freddie Mullins wide open and tried to get back in time to stop him, but to no avail. Green lights in Raphael's face with the Wolves' lead up to 4 points. Raphael read the play well, but couldn't get back in time to properly contest the shot, and this was just another 2 points that could have been avoided. And at this point, Raphael was angry, trying to get Freddie back, but Freddie did what Raphael couldn't, and that was to get the stop. The Wolves bring up the ball with only a 5-second difference between the shot clock and the game clock, and there was a pause. Raphael decided to take action. No, he didn't foul Wayne Forbes. Raphael picked Wayne's pockets, passed the rock to Deion King, who found Leo Yamasaki in the corner, resulting in a clutch 3-point shot with less than 10 seconds left in the game. What a shot by Leo. Lord knows I've been upset with him throughout the season, but not in this moment, fam. Now with 9 seconds left, the Lakers decided to foul Mel Reynolds with only a 1-point deficit and now 6.5 seconds left. With the pressure on, I must say, Mel folded and he missed the first shot. He ain't got the ice in his veins like that. But you better believe Mel made sure to hit that second shot. The Lakers called a timeout, and this is it, fam. It's do or die. In the final moment, Raphael tried to find an opening towards the rim, and when he did, he pulled a Ben Simmons and passed the rock to Leo, who bricked the shot, but Gilbert Hajiwara was able to get the save and tie the game with a half second left. Amazing. This game was headed to overtime. Now in overtime, we still had a tough time guarding the pick and roll, and it didn't help that Raphael had a string of errors, but specifically during this possession, Freddie Mullins got by Raphael again off the pick and roll to take a 2-point lead, Wolves 121 to 119. And there was 2 instances where Raphael thought he broke his defender off the dribble only to get contested at the rim, but not in this moment as he greened a close shot. But one of the more costly mistakes was here when Raphael was guarding Darren Gin, and he thought that Gilbert Hajiwara picked Tomas Sankovic's pockets and started leaking, as you can see right here. But Tomas was able to recover the rock, and Darren Gin had an easy lane to the rack, 2 points for the Wolves, 125 to 121. Fast forward to the next possession to when Raphael thought he had Ricky Boss beat, but Ricky himself contested Raphael, which ended up leading to a huge 3-point shot from Mel Reynolds off of the fast break, Wolves 128 to 121. That's right, the Wolves were on a 9-2 run. But Raphael tried to make up for his errors by letting the play develop, and on the next possession, he found the opening for a quick 2 points in the paint. But his efforts were quickly nullified by yet another pick and roll where Wayne Forbes fought for 2 points, this time over Leo Yamasaki. Now still down by 7, Raphael and Gilbert Hajiwara decided to get some get back and give the Wolves a taste of their own medicine with the pick and roll, score now 130 to 125. I can't hold you. I wanted to trade Leo as of week 2, but he was able to surprise me after throwing Wayne Forbes off his game. And here, Pablo almost sold, but Deion King fortunately was able to recover the board to get the Lakers to within 3. Now, with under 2 minutes left, Wayne again thought he could abuse Leo in the post, but Leo stood his ground yet again. Leo found Raphael in the paint to bring the game to within 1 point. Raphael be trying it sometimes with these jumpers instead of finishing at the rim, but 2 points are 2 points. And I don't know why the Wolves tried it again, but Wayne Forbes placed Leo in the post. Leo contested the shot and leaked out for a dot from Raphael to take the lead within under a minute and a half left. And looking at the replay, Leo almost dropped the pass. Imagine, I would have had to ship him to New Zealand, no cap. Shout out to Steve Adams. At this point, it was very important for the Lakers to continue to apply pressure, but close to a minute left and the Lakers sold again off the pick and roll, this time with Gilbert Hajiwara failing to cover Tomas Sankovic. Down by 1, Raphael tried to slow the pace a little to let Gilbert catch up and insisted that he get some get back with the pick and roll. Lakers back in charge. 54 seconds left, it's do or die again. Raphael and the team knew they were trash guarding the pick and roll, and their awareness was focused on making sure they didn't whiff again. But the rookie Leo Yamasaki got under Wayne Forbes' skin again for a key stop, but the Lakers weren't able to capitalize because Pablo sold again, missing an open mid-range shot. The Wolves got back on the fast break, and oh my goodness, what a dunk by Tomas Sankovic. Real talk. Was that a post on Raphael? I don't know. I don't think so, but you can let me know down in the comments. Now, soon after, Raphael got the Wolves back, scoring himself with the dunk to take the lead again. The Wolves called another timeout with less than 25 seconds left, and they wanted to hit us with another pick and roll, but Mel Reynolds missed the opportunity, so the Wolves defaulted to their lead, Wade Forbes again. And I just peeped that O'Shea Ryder wasn't in the game, which is a major drawback since Tank Oden was in the game for him. But Wayne ended up missing the shot, and the Wolves ended up playing the foul game. The Lakers win 137 to 134. What a game. Raphael, despite the errors, he had a solid game, scoring his jersey number in points. He also had 8 boards, 7 assists, 3 steals, shooting 65% from the field and 75% from beyond the arc, surprisingly. And Gilbert, he also had a 20-point double-double with 21 boards, 2 assists, and 3 blocks, shooting 60% from the field. It's just amazing when you look at the stat line to think that this team struggled to close out the game in the fourth quarter. And then you look at Deion King, who had an 18-point triple-double with 10 boards, 11 assists, shooting 6 for 8 from the field. And even Pablo, who was selling with 6 shots made out of 21, he was able to get 16 points, 4 boards, and 6 assists. But if I had to give a big shout out, that shout out would be to Leo Yamasaki. His stat line does not begin to highlight the true impact that he had on this game. Shooting 40% from the field with 11 points, 4 boards, and 6 assists. It was those clutch moments that I highlighted, which definitely helped the Lakers secure this win and actually keeps them safe at least until the end of the season. Now, the Timberwolves could have easily won this game as well. We have Wayne Forbes, and yes, Wayne is related to Quinn Forbes on the Pistons, He had a solid 34 points, 5 boards, and 5 assists, shooting 33% from the field and 50% from beyond the arc. Tomas Stankovic always seems to be doing his thing, almost bringing in a triple-double with 23 points, 6 boards, 9 assists, and 2 blocks, shooting 10 from 18 from the field. I would say the Timberwolves actually had a lot of players with double-doubles, ranging from Mel Reynolds, surprisingly, who had 18 points, 10 assists, Freddie Mullins, who high-key is getting better and better with 15 points and 15 boards. And then you have O'Shea Ryder, who wasn't on the court at all in the fourth nor in overtime. He had 14 points, 12 boards, and it looks like he fouled out, which definitely helped us. And then finally, we have Ricky Boss, who had 12 points, 14 assists in this game out of the, where was he? He had 36 minutes played, so it's not bad, shooting 6 for 9. Definitely gave me a problem on the offensive side. But then outside of that, I tip my hat to the Timberwolves. This was a hard-fought win, and I enjoyed every moment of it, including the errors. Our next game is going to be the Wizards up against the Pelicans. Coming into the week, the Wizards were dead last in the East with a record of 16-64. The team has been struggling after their top player Raymond Castillo got injured. Now sure, O.J. Holmes would be considered the team's top player from an overall perspective, but he hasn't been contributing as much as I had hoped since the beginning of the season. But nonetheless, the first quarter was very close with a number of lead changes. By the end of the first, the Pelicans were able to take a 1-point lead, and I started to prepare myself to hop into the game, especially after what happened with the Lakers. But surprisingly enough, the Pelicans pulled away in the second and went on to win the game 108-84. Miles had another solid game, although he shot horribly from beyond the arc, finishing the game with 28 points, 8 boards, 7 assists, and shooting 11 for 19. Axe had a solid stat line as well, although he didn't score as much as he did up against the 76ers. He did get 18 points, 9 boards, 2 steals on 50% shooting. And then Michael Kent surprised me. He showed up today shooting 50% from beyond the arc and 4 for 7 from the field to end up with 15 points. And yes, we even got production out of Zach Ellis Jr. with 12 points, 5 for 9 shooting, 4 steals, a block. I must say we need more of that, or even much more of that from Zach. Now, while I would love to bask in our win, we need to talk about Sylvester Arthur. My first reaction was, who is this giving us buckets? This man shot 10 for 19 from the field, 4 for 9 from beyond the arc, and 25 points on the game. He literally almost outscored Miles. This man did not play the entire season and gave us buckets. I was shocked. And on top of that, he's a 65 overall, which is absurd. I mean, he did jump up 3 overalls from the beginning of the season, but yo, the Pelicans defense is really sus if he gave us problems like that. The second highest scorer on the Wizards was Yves Macy. Yves Macy didn't progress at all from an overall perspective, but his contribution has been somewhat consistent over the season. But nonetheless, I was shocked to see how these two individuals gave the Pelicans buckets. I expected much more from Harvey Collins, but the team was able to contain Harvey by limiting him to 38% shooting and 11 points. Overall, this was a solid win for the Pelicans. But next is the much anticipated game between Chase Auguste and the Dallas Mavericks up against Onyx Gatling and the Denver Nuggets. Now, the Nuggets have had a bit of a rough season, although they have a pretty solid team. And coming into this game, the Nuggets were 12th out west, but still, the Mavs couldn't sleep on this team. And the reason I say this is because the Nuggets have OJ the Juice Man Sparks. Shout out to Juice Man. Juice can pretty much torch you and get to the rack with ease. Onyx Gatling, who can score at all levels, and a few other players who are dangerous like Drew McNeil and Stefano Kent. But nonetheless, by the end of the first, the Mavs were down by 10 and the deficit expanded to 18 towards the end of the quarter, which made me have to hop in because if we were down this bad so early in the game, the second half might have been brutal. Now, diving into the second, I quickly learned that this was a very physical and fast-paced game between the two teams. And although the Mavs bench defense is pretty sus, the team made a concerted effort to get stops and capitalize on them. Sometimes the team was a bit too aggressive, which led to a lot of shots at the line. Now, Onyx Gatling and Steve Levens were going at it throughout this game, and this clip highlights why Onyx is a threat. He hit Steve with a mean spin move and scored over both Steve and Hugh Hendricks to score and draw a foul. So peep game. So that mean spin move, cross, lay, contact, and one. And by the end of the half, the Mavs were down by 12, mainly because the shooting was terrible. Juice Man was leading the Nuggets with 13 points and 3 assists, and Steve Levens was the most impactful for the Mavs with 4 points, 8 boards, and 3 assists. But fast forward to the third, the Mavs were down by 11, but they were clicking a lot better than what we saw in the sim. Case in point, look at the nice bounce pass from Neil Upshaw Jr. to Duncan Webb to reduce the gap to 9 points. And I will say that the way the team clicked in this quarter was entirely different to the time that they went up against the Knicks earlier this season. In fact, I still have PTSD from that game. But this highlight reinforces what I just said. Pay attention here. After Steve got the great stop, you can see the great ball movement from the Mavs to get a quick and efficient 2 points in the paint after everyone literally touched the ball. And here again, Steve Levens, with the help of Duncan Webb, got Onyx to take a poor shot, which led to another fast break, ending with a nice midi from Eddie Howe. And by the way, at this point, the Mavs were on a 6-2 run. Now, at times, I wish we could get more production out of Eddie from a scoring perspective, but here's the reason why I don't harp on him too much, because look at the chemistry between Eddie and Duncan Webb. Hey! Nice alley from Eddie to Duncan. And now, for those of you that didn't check out the Dallas team highlight video, Duncan Webb is modeled after Zion Williamson, so check it out. Now, I know I mentioned this before, but the battle between Steve Levens and Onyx Gatling made me a fan of their abilities on the court. As you just saw, Onyx scored a nice mid-range shot, bringing the score to 41-48. But yeah, there are a few players that have been really doing it up as part of these FBL games, those that I've highlighted and those that haven't, and it gets me excited for what's to come in the future of this league, especially when I think about this incoming draft class, which I plan to show over the next couple of videos. Now, getting back to the action, the scores was back and forth with the Mavs trying to get back into the game. Onyx and Juice Man were feasting on the court, but the Mavs wouldn't go down without a fight. Chase, in fact, had several plays to help reduce the deficit during each possession. Now, the Mavs did struggle with the fouls, which gave the Nuggets the cushions they needed to keep the lead. On top of that, the Mavs didn't have an answer for Stefano Kent, who just kept saucing Brevin Ivy. And mind you, it wasn't just Brevin that had problems with Stefano. Rod McGee had an issue, as well as others. And here, Stefano let it be known that no one could sleep on him given his stature. First, he blew by not only Brevin Ivy, but also Liam Murray for an easy bucket at the paint. And then the next possession, Stefano sauces Brevin Ivy up again and hit a floater over he and Rod McGee, 58-63. And on top of that, Stefano Kent even had Chase out here looking goofy after hitting him with a mean crossover to finish at the rim. Oof, and he banged on him. Peep that? Cross, hammer it home on top of Rod McGee. Sheesh. Now don't get it confused though. The Mavs had some fun in them with Chase hitting some desperately needed 3-point shots, the first off with a floppy, and then again to take the lead at the end of the quarter. Now it wasn't green, but it was still a mean shot, 68-67. And in the fourth, Chase continued to show his range as the Mavs tried to take over. No cap, I didn't know Chase could hit shots from the hash like that, but he was showing Neil that Neil ain't the only one that could be deadly from beyond the arc. A few minutes later, with the score 79-76 in favor of the Mavs, and good gosh, that boy Drew McNeil got hit with a sturdy pick from Jermaine Armstrong, which Chase fully capitalized on with another green shot. Now, despite the effort, the Nuggets were only down by 5 points. It still had 8 minutes left in the game, and this is when Onyx started cooking again. First with the mean green from the midi, and there, Onyx got the pick. Drew McNeil started leaking, froze Chase with a crossover, and ended with the easy layup in the paint. Onyx with the vision, Drew with the cross and shot. This was great defense and great offensive transitioning. The Nuggets continued to beat the Mavs on the fast break because of their poor transition defense. However, each bucket the Nuggets gave the Mavs returned the favor in kind, scoring very quickly. Nice ball movement for Rod, nice finish from Chase, another 2 points for the Mavs. Now with the 2-point differential and almost 6 minutes left in the game, Chase and Steve Levens got a great stop against Onyx. Duncan missed a layup over Boyets, but hey, Steve came up big for the Mavs with that putback dunk, showing his athleticism. And as I said before, man, the key matchup was between Steve Levens and Onyx Gatling. And in this moment, I thought Onyx had Steve beat, but look at the nice block. I hopped out of my seat when I saw this happen. It was in this moment that I was like, I need to sign Steve back to the Mavs in the offseason. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Now with Juice back in the game, he continued to apply pressure. He was picking pockets, showing his range, just being a problem. Keep that mean green from 3. Sheesh. With that score, the Nuggets were only down by 1 point, and no cap, Juice is a threat. He didn't even give Eddie a chance to react. Next play, Eddie wanted to show out and let Juice know he's him too, hitting a moving shot from the free throw line in front of Juice's face for 2 points. Mind you, not only was it a moving shot, but it was a leaning green shot. Shout out to Eddie Sean. Oof, buckets. With under 5 minutes, it's still a 3-point game, so anything could happen. But I will say that both teams remained competitive. Even Neil Upshaw Jr. was getting involved, as you can see, with a nice cut to the basket. And Eddie with the nice vision to throw the dot for 2 points. Next possession, Onyx Gatling let it be known that he wasn't going to go down without a fight. Same play as earlier, which Steve should have been prepared for, but Onyx was able to get Steve and hit him with a nice tough layup. Score was now 91-88. But the team made some errors. Chase in this play, he ends up with his 5th foul, which meant he couldn't be as aggressive on defense with under 4 minutes left in the game. Juice saw the opportunity and took full advantage of this. He first started out by getting a key defensive stop, leaking out to the wing, and to quote Juice himself, bang, hitting a crucial 3-point shot. It took me so much time to get his tendencies right, but boy, Juice is deadly, especially when he has the rock in his hands. Under 2 minutes to go, a 1-point deficit, Juice reads the defense, sees an opening, sizes Eddie up, and blows by him with a nice layup in the paint. I high-key wish that Juice got some bodies in this game. I might have to look at his tendencies again. But still, with the 1-point lead and less than 90 seconds left, Duncan put everybody on notice that he wanted all the smoke even though he was injured, ending with a 2-hand cram at the rim. Now, it might be in my imagination, but I get the impression that Juice thought Eddie was soft. Pause for those of you that need it. He didn't even call for an ISO in this play and just sauced Eddie up to finish at the rim. Do we count that as a body? I don't know, but you let me know down in the comments. In this moment, Duncan had the advantage in my opinion. If only he posted up Bo Yates, but he missed the shot. Fortunately, Steve was able to get the putback to get the Mavs some breathing room. Now with less than 30 seconds left, the Mavs tried to seal the deal, but Juice did a great job contesting Duncan's shot. As you saw earlier, the team hasn't been the best defending fast break, and at this point, I noticed that we had 3 real threats to deal with, and a possible. First, we had Drew McNeil on the wing who could potentially be wide open for a 3 to tie the game. This was dangerous because Drew won the 3-point contest this season. Need I say more? The second was Juice Man, who we saw several times in this game show his range, so given the right look, he could tie the game with ease. Third was Onyx, who could shoot from all 3 levels. Considering Chase had 5 fouls already, Onyx could easily shoot the midi and draw contact to get to the line and tie the game. And finally, we have Carl Sims, but both Eddie and Chase were looking to stop the 3-ball from the right wing, so I think he was pretty much covered there. Now peep game. Neil Upshaw Jr. quickly picked up Drew McNeil to stop the 3-ball from him, and so Onyx was actually the only one who had a clear look and lane. As Chase tried to cut back and contest Onyx, Onyx surprised everyone by passing it to Juice for the shot. Now, no one saw Duncan Webb closing out on Juice, which forced him to take a bad shot, and that helped the Mavs win the game. This was by far the best defense I've seen this team execute on the fast break, minus Chase's error. I have no issue losing because I learn and get better, but nothing tops winning a hard-fought battle. This is a stark difference between how the Mavs played against the Knicks in the game I highlighted a few months ago, but nonetheless, Chase ended up being the player of the game, and I'm absolutely here for it. Now, fun fact, I don't know anyone's points unless a stat line comes up on the screen during the game, because I personally like to be surprised, just as you look at the box scores. And in this case, Juice Man did his thing, leading the team in scoring with an overall solid stat line, minus the 25% from the 3-point line. Now, I personally think that the Denver Nuggets don't utilize the Juice Man the way they should. 23 points is rather low considering his abilities. Personally, I think he should be averaging around 40 points per game if they utilize him well, but I think a lot of the touches, a lot of the plays are ran for Onyx. So with that being said, I want to give a big shout out to Juice Man because OJ the Juice Man Sparks is his character, and boy did Juice deliver. I'm going to leave the link to Juice's site in the description, but let's move on. The next person is Onyx Gatling because he also did his thing with 22 points, 8 boards, 4 assists, 3 steals, but Steve Levins did exactly what I needed him to do, and that was to neutralize Onyx. With Onyx neutralized and the team not utilizing Juice Man the way they should, this is, in my opinion, part of the reason why they lost this game, and probably a lot of the other games during the season. Now, Stefano Kent, he's part of the second string, although I highly disagree with this. I certainly miss seeing Stefano Kent in the starting 5. That's where he started off at the beginning of the season. But nonetheless, you can see he had a great stat line coming off the bench with 18 points, 3 boards, 4 assists, and 2 steals. He was an absolute menace drawing contact and hitting his free throws. Now, the current 3-point champion, Drew McNeil, he didn't even attempt a 3-point shot in this game, but he did have 13 points and almost had perfect shooting from the field. That might have been our saving grace. So if 1, Onyx was on fire like he could be, if 2, they utilized OJ the Juice Man Sparks as they should, and 3, Drew McNeil shot the way he should have shot, this game would have went entirely a different way. Now, as for the Mavs, Chase absolutely carried the team. He was the only person on the squad that was able to hit a three-pointer, let alone four, shooting 50% from the field, scoring 34 points, getting 6 boards, 3 assists, and 4 steals. In fact, he had double the points of Duncan Webb, who had 16 points and 7 boards. Now, I admit, looking at the stat line, I could definitely be working on my three-point shooting or shooting overall. 50% isn't terrible, but there's definitely room for improvement. But outside of that, Steve Levens did exactly what I needed him to do, and that was to slow Onyx Gatling down. I know I mentioned that as part of the Nuggets box score overview, but this is a very important fact. So from an offensive perspective, Steve had a 12-point double-double with 18 boards, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and a shot 6 for 9. But I think he was more impactful on the defensive end, and that's what I like about Steve. Neil Upshaw Jr., he had 10 points, 7 assists, a steal, and a block, and shot 4 for 8. Eddie Yau's presence was more on the defensive end than it was on the offensive end, with 6 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, and 3 steals, but his impact was definitely felt as he was able to get a few stops that I just didn't highlight as part of this video. Now, I don't give these two guys many roses, but shout out to Brevin Ivy for his offensive contribution at the line, as well as his 7 boards. And also, Rod McGee, he had a really solid contribution to the team with 8 points, 2 boards, 8 assists, and 2 steals. And so I'm happy we got this win. There's only one game left to wrap up the Mavs season, but next up, we have the Kings versus the Lakers. Now, I got a notification that Richard Green was injured and that our rotation had to be rejiggered. Now, this was a big loss to the team, not because of the offensive contribution, but because of what Richard Green brings on the defensive side. Now, Richard will be out for 2 to 4 weeks, which will be tough, but we ended up with this rotation where I tried some players at different positions with the hope of finishing the week strong. I kid you not. I wanted to simulate the game with Simcast, but I fumbled and ended up simulating the entire game. But fortunately for me, the Lakers won by 17 points. Now, looking at the box score, Raphael led the team in scoring with 21 points, 7 boards, 3 assists, 4 steals, and 2 blocks. Leo Yamasaki again showed up with better efficiency, shooting 63% from the field and 71% from beyond the arc, with 17 points, 5 boards, and 2 steals. So, Leo has definitely surprised me. I will take these small gains wherever possible. Then we have Deion King, who came close to a triple-double with 15 points, 9 boards, and 7 assists. And both Pablo and Gilbert had poor shooting splits, but still did their thing, with Gilbert, who had a 10-point, 12-rebound double-double with 4 assists and 12 blocks, and Pablo with 12 points and 5 assists. Now, the Kings left a lot to be decided. Looking at the score, my first reaction was, Brandon Jordan did his thing with 19 points and shot a little over 50%, but then I realized that Brandon is part of the second string. And if you look to the left and see the score by quarter, the Kings had a 3-point lead by the end of the third quarter and just tanked the fourth. The starting five combined for 53 points. Herbert Humphreys and Patrick Zipser both had 14 points, with Patrick getting a double-double, but Trey Franklin was lost in the sauce. He barely made any shot attempts, and as the lead of the team, that's pretty sad. And moving on, we have the last game in the regular season for the Mavericks, where Chase went up against Harry Reynolds and the OKC Thunder, and at this point, the Mavs were on a 4-game winning streak. Now, the Thunder did in fact lead a good portion of the first, with the Mavs coming back and winning the quarter by 1 point, but by the end of the second quarter, the Mavs had a 9-point lead over the Thunder. Now, towards the end of the third, the Mavs completely took over to stretch their lead out by 24 points, and ultimately, this game ended in a 26-point blowout, with Chase shooting 76% from the field and scoring 36 of them things. Now, Eddie Yao had a phenomenal game, man, with 22 points, 6 boards, and 6 assists, shooting for 70. That's right, 70%. Neil Upshaw Jr. and Steve Levens both had double-doubles, with Neil scoring 13 points and 11 assists, whereas Steve scored 12 points and had 12 boards. Even the injured Duncan Webb went off with 12 points, 6 boards, 6 assists, and 2 blocks, matching Steve's 56% shooting from the field. And even Rod McGee, he had a plus 10-point game, shooting 44% from the field. So I really can't complain about anybody's performance when it came to this game. Now, I know I haven't shown the Thunder much over the course of the season, but I can say that Harry has been a beast since the last couple of games that I showed. Definitely one of the top 5 rookies in the league to date. But looking at the box score, Harry continues to perform well with 28 points, 8 boards, shooting 12 for 17. But he definitely needs more support from both the starters and the bench. Don't get me wrong, Marshall Manning and Vitaly Belus were able to contribute, but there's a lot missing from an efficiency perspective, so I can't hold you. Marshall Manning did get 18 points, 6 boards, and 4 assists, shooting on 32% shooting from the field, whereas Vitaly had 13 points and 4 twos, not including the turnovers, and shot for 42%. But the Thunder definitely take a lot of shots as a team, but the issue is that they don't make them, which might be why they came into this week as the 11th seed. And of course, for the final game of the Pelican season, they get to go up against the 4th seeded Spurs. Now, just last week, the Pels went up against the Spurs, and it was a hard-fought battle. The team has been on a 7-game win streak, and if we can close this game out, the Pelicans just might be able to make the playoffs. In the first, there are about 7 lead changes and only a 4-point differential in favor of the Pelicans, but in the second quarter, the Pelicans were able to take a 19-point lead up against the Spurs. Now, don't get me wrong, the Spurs were able to change the tide and take the third quarter by 2 points, but at this point, it was a do-or-die situation for the Pelicans because if you've been paying attention over the past couple of weeks, let alone month, the Pelicans are not the greatest at closing out the fourth quarter, so it was important for them to not blow their 17-point lead in the fourth. After 4 lead changes in the fourth, the Pelicans were able to get the much-needed win against the Spurs, winning 108-88. Now, Miles and Axe both came out swinging, with Miles almost achieving a double-double with 21 points, 6 boards, 9 assists, and shooting 12 for 23. Axe had a solid 27 points, 5 boards, 2 assists, and still shooting 11 for 16 from the field and perfect from beyond the arc. Stephen Lee even battled it out with Spencer Wang and had 11 points and 10 boards, although he shot 38% from the field. But Michael Kent showed up again with a decent stat line with 11 points, 3 boards, 3 assists, and shooting for 60% from the field. I wish he would increase his volume while maintaining this efficiency because this would provide a lot of depth in scoring to our bench. But from a Spurs perspective, it's clear that Steven also gave Spencer some problems. Now, don't get me wrong, Spencer had a great stat line with 22 points, 6 boards, 8 assists, 2 steals, and 3 blocks, shooting 9 for 19, but Stephen Lee kept Spencer to under his average shooting percentage. Now, the next top scorer was Abe Price, who had an average of about 9 points, a little under 9 points over the season, but in this game he had 15 shooting for 40%, and he was getting his dimes. On top of that, we have Joel Cousins, who is normally a low scorer as well, and by low I mean averaging under 9 points per game. He had 12 points, 5 boards, an assist, and a steal, all while shooting for 50%, one of which was a 3-point shot. And mind you, Joel is a 7'2" center. Now, outside of these 3, the rest of the team simply couldn't guard their matchups nor make their shots, but I can't hold you with Seth Gibbs and Edmund Mack both out with injuries. These injuries definitely made our life a lot easier in this game, and it's a win I will gladly take. And finally, and no, this is not me imitating The Rock, but finally, we have the last game of the season for the Lakers and this video. So if you made it this far, you must be liking the content. Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts about the video, about the league in general, and what you want to see in the next video. But back to the game at hand. The Suns are a problem, and I know in the Jazz game, they pretty much got washed, but there's a reason this team is the 7th seed, and the Lakers can't take this game lightly, especially since Richard Green is out with an injury, and our bench will need to step it up in order for us to stay in the game. Now, the Suns took a 6-point lead early in the game, and by the second, the Lakers bench was able to cut the deficit. Now, in the last 2 minutes of the quarter, there were several lead changes with the Suns leading by 3. And in the third quarter, the battle continued with several lead changes occurring, and by the end of the third, we were only down by 1 point. Now, at this point, I felt the need to hop in because we had too much riding on this game, and I didn't want to chance it as I did last week against the Warriors. Now, Raphael was aggressive to start the quarter, driving to the lane for a tough layup to get a nice 2 points to get things started. But in the next possession, Coach had Raphael matched up with Chris Cross, and as you can see, Raphael made a huge error giving Chris so much space, and that's because time and time again I've said it that Chris can and will pull it even if he misses a lot. Now, we were struggling, man. The Suns were doing whatever they wanted, whereas the Lakers looked both lost on defense and offense, and here The team had poor transition on the fast break, and Omari Fofana makes an easy dunk in the paint. Nice pass by Jace, and even a nicer finish by Omari. Now here's another example of our poor transition defense, right? Gilbert's not even in the paint, and Chris Cross gets a putback dunk. We're looking real sus out here. And I can't hold you, Jace Van Rossum gave us problems defensively and kept picking passes left and right, and yet again, we had issues transitioning on the fast break, and at this point, we're down bad, 10 points at this point. Now, Raphael did get back in time, but Chris just had better positioning for the layup. Now, at this point, both Deion King and Sidney Frazier are cold, and we need to stop to change the momentum, which was not happening here because Deion King couldn't guard Kim Shafino. It was just a straight mess. Kim may be 6'2", but he has mad bounce in his game. Now fast forward, we're down by 7, and Jace Van Rossum has an open 3-point shot and misses, but Omari Fofana gets the putback and suns Leo Yamasaki in the process. Oof, that was a mean post. I felt bad for Leo, man. But finally, we got some life into Deion, and here, you can see that Deion made a nice mid-range shot, but Kim Shafino came right back after this possession to make a crazy layup in the paint, and I just don't know why Deion switched off of Kim, but the fact that neither Raphael nor Sidney could get the block was pretty wild to me. And as I said, Kim has some hops and he has some finesse when he wants to have it, but nonetheless, Deion tried to make up for his mistake by getting a nice putback, but we were still down by 16 points at this point. And now with each action we took, I must say it was met with great defense. As you saw here, Jace Van Rossum was a major pest in this game. He was able to get not one, but 2 steals in succession. And in this highlight right here, he was able to get a huge chase down block on Leo Yamasaki. I mean, this game was pretty much a wrap, and I pretty much sold this game. I sat back and wondered what would have happened if I didn't jump in. But like I said in the last game, you got to take the losses with the wins. You got to take the good with the bad in order to get better. So the Lakers end up losing 99-115. And Lord, the Suns definitely had their way with the Lakers, and I definitely blame myself for that. In any case, Chris Cross had his way with us, getting 27 points, 7 boards, 2 assists, 3 steals, and a block, all while shooting a little over 50%. And Kim Shafino, who wasn't efficient at all, put us to shame with 23 points, 4 boards, and 6 assists. Sheesh. Jimmy Taylor also went off for 16 points, 5 boards, and 3 assists, shooting for 6 for 13. And I'm kind of low-key upset I didn't get to see Jimmy in the game because, you know, I'm a big fan right now. But outside of Jimmy, we had Omari Fofana, who had a good stat line as well with 13, 8, and 5. And he torched us from the free throw line. And sheesh. Kim Shafino did the same as well. In fact, a lot of people on the Suns were able to get to the line. That's tough. Guy Costa, he had a double-double with 10 points and 12 rebounds, shooting for 50%. And Horace Dandrid also shot for 50% as well. So shout out to him. In the pest, Jace Van Rossum, he only had 2 points, but he had 7 boards, 5 assists, and 5 steals, 4 blocks. Offensively, he wasn't there, but defensively, yo, he might be somebody to consider in the offseason. I ain't gonna hold you. And as for the Lakers, it was evident that Raphael was the one selling here. And by Raphael, I mean me, shooting 7 for 23 and 2 for 9 from the 3-point line. The double-double didn't mean much considering how poorly Raphael shot, but at the same time, there was low volume of shooting all across the board. Deion King had a good stat line with 19 points, 8 boards, 2 assists, shooting for 50%, but he and Raphael combined had 9 turnovers, which resulted in points off of the fast break very easily. Pablo and Leo performed well, with each scoring over 10 points and shooting well from beyond the arc. Gilbert had a 10 and 18 double-double, but shot 3 for 7. So ultimately, this was a tough loss to swallow, especially when you look at the final outcome of the regular season. So what do I mean by that? Look at this, fam. When I say I sold, I really, really sold. Because of this loss to the Suns, the Lakers are not the 1 seed, and we ended up tying from a win-loss perspective with the Warriors. That game had more weight than I realized, and we ended up losing. Imagine if we won, we would have been the 1 seed. The Lakers would have had a home court advantage, but we do not have that. But on a positive note, The Mavericks finished third in the conference, which is a great look, so shout out to Chase and the team, as well as Eli Harris and the Rockets for securing the 4th seed. Shout out to Hoodie Sean because Eli Harris is one of his players in the NBA 2K space. Now, looking at the playoff bracket, you can see there are a lot of good matches, and to my surprise, the Pelicans were able to secure the 8th seed, but they are up against Kenji Hall and J.R. Griffin in the first round, which will be tough. The Rockets will be facing the Timberwolves, which make for a good series. The Mavs are up against the Spurs, which might be a challenge if Seth and Edmund are back in time. And finally, the Lakers have a chance to get some get back and battle it out again with the Suns, but with higher stakes. And out in the Eastern Conference, we have the Knicks going up against the 76ers, but I fully expect the Knicks to make light work out of the 76ers, barring some injuries. And then after that, we have the Hornets going up against, or I should say, the offensive Hornets, because I wanted to make note of that, going up against the defensive Hawks, which should be an interesting series as well. It's kind of like the immovable object going up against the unstoppable force. I think that's the right saying. Let me know if I'm right. But after that, we then have the Bucks going up against the Bulls, which could go either way, really because of the differences in the lineups. And then finally, we have Darren Harper and the Magic going up against Logan Wolf and the Raptors. Man, this is probably a long episode because this was 5 hours worth of footage, but I loved every minute of it. I hope you did too. And if you made it this far, let me know which series you think will be the most interesting, which teams you have to win the chip, and also which games you want to see. But before I go, big shout out to Juice Man because OJ the Juice Man Sparks is one of his players, as I mentioned earlier. YG the Beast because Kim Shafino is one of his players, and Hoodie Sean, although none of his players were in this episode, we will probably see a lot of Kenji and Eli Harris in the next couple of episodes. These content creators inspired me to create this series, so feel free to check out their channels and show them some love. Their links are down below in the description. You can let them know I sent you. And now, with that being said, remember that in order to do, you first gotta be. I appreciate you always, and until next time, I hope you have a good one. Later.